Hello everybody, welcome to the I Am IT Geek YouTube channel. My name is Shabazz Dar and I am the IT Geek. Before we get started, I just want to thank everybody who subscribed and who has commented and watched the videos. I really appreciate your support. The whole reason why I'm doing these videos is to help people and for people to learn in areas where I have knowledge. So if there's anything in my videos that you like, just let me know, or if there's anything that you want me to change, or any recommendations on how I can improve the content, please, do reach out, drop me a message or a comment, or on my LinkedIn or on my Twitter page. I always appreciate feedback, positive or negative, as long as it's constructive, of course. So please do let me know how my videos are and if you want to see anything else different. So let's get started. So as I mentioned, this is a new series, and this series is going to be around Azure Identity Access Management. Before we get into the first episode, I just want to give you an idea of some of the topics I'll be covering in this series. So this episode, straight after this introduction, is going to be an introduction into the topic of Azure Identity and Access Management. So I'll go into some of the features from a high level, including some of the requirements around it, and what actually is Azure Identity and Access Management, and who uses it. In episode 2, we'll start on Azure AD, and you notice there it says part 1. It's going to be a 2-part topic just because it's such a huge area within Azure. So Azure AD part 1 will be in episode 2, and that'll be more sort of the theory behind it. What we'll do then is we'll jump into episode 3, which will be part 2 of Azure AD, but that'll be more hands-on, and I'll be in the portal actually showing certain features and how you can configure those. We'll then jump into episode 4, where I'll be going into Azure AD Hybrid. Again, this is a 2-part topic, just because of the sheer size and the amount of information we have to cover. And I'll then be that Azure AD Hybrid video will go more into Azure AD Connect, and again, some of the theory behind that. There'll obviously be a part 2, as I mentioned, and in that, again, I'll go more hands-on and show you the process of configuring Azure AD Connect and some of the hybrid features, including ADFS you can configure, pass-through authentication, and password hash sync. We'll finish off the series with Azure AD Domain Services. So this is a cloud only identity management. And it's a service that synchronizes with Azure AD, but it's more a domain controller as a service. So I'll go into some theory around that, and then again go into the admin center and show you where it is and how we can configure it. So that's the series introduction out the way with. Let's get started with this first episode. So a quick introduction as to what I'm going to be speaking about in this episode. So as I mentioned, this is an Azure Identity Management introduction. So the first thing I'm going to discuss is what is Azure Identity and Access Management. So I'll try and give you some insight into what it is and some of the components and features around it. Next, I'll cover how it works. So how does Azure Identity and Access Management work with I'll go through like a diagram and show you the different components and the kind of process flow as part of that diagram. So that'll give you a bit of an insight into how it works. Finally, I'll explain the different options available within Azure Identity and Access Management. Some of those you probably already know because I've mentioned them in my other episode titles. So we'll go through some of those and a bit of, again, all very high level because we're going to do a bit more of a deeper dive as we go through the series. So, what is Azure Identity and Access Management? Azure Identity Access Management, or IAM, known in the short reference, allows tenants to control and protect access to your apps and your resources, including your infrastructure as a service, your platform as a service, and your software as a service services. So we're talking about your sort of infrastructure in Azure, so your networking, your virtual machines. I should talk about your software as a service and your platform as a service. You're talking about Windows Virtual Desktop, Exchange Online, SharePoint Online, databases. Your SQL database workloads. Those are sort of things that you can kind of control and protect access using Azure AD and using Azure Identity and Access Management. IAM allows tenants to have additional levels of validation and authentication. So as we saw in Series 1 with multi-factor authentication, this kind of classes another level of authentication which is controlled by Azure Identity Management. So in MFA's case, it's the Azure AD service, which we will discuss in the later episodes. And finally, IAM helps businesses defend against malicious attacks to their cloud tenants. And that can also be extended out to your on-premises infrastructure when you incorporate a hybrid identity management model. And again, that's something that we're going to touch on in a lot more detail in future episodes. So next, how does IAM work? So this is a bit of a high-level sort of diagram that I've just put together that I wanted to go through with you to help explain some of the process flow. At the centre of it all is Azure Active Directory. So this is the sort of default identity management service within Microsoft Cloud. So I say Microsoft Cloud because it covers both Microsoft 365 and Azure. So if we start off by looking at sort of a hybrid implementation, you would have Azure AD Connect in the middle, although this is kind of it's installed on premises. What that allows you to do is synchronize all your identity objects, be it users, groups, devices, from your Windows Server Active Directory. So, and then you've got your on-premises applications, which you can also use with your hybrid identity then. So that allows the identity objects on premises to use applications in Azure and Microsoft 365 and vice versa. So that's sort of how the flow with that works. You've also got, from the other side, you've got your cloud applications. So Office 365 I mentioned, Google Drive, SAP, Salesforce. These are all cloud applications, so they're hosted on the cloud, they're not on premises, and they're not in Microsoft, apart from Office 365, they're not in Microsoft 365. And what you then have is you have your identity synchronized using some sort of federation or some sort of SAML authentication, which allows you then to use those same identity objects within Azure Active Directory with your third-party cloud applications like SAP and Salesforce. And you see we've got Azure in there as well, and Microsoft 365. Although they're not really third-party, they are still cloud applications. So Azure Active Directory then can synchronize with those as well. So there we've covered on-premises, we've covered the flow of cloud applications as well. You can also use Azure Active Directory and identity management with Azure Active Directory with your own business applications. So you may have a line of business applications or apps your developers have created themselves, so they don't have to be well-known cloud applications or anything in Azure. They can be your own applications that your developers have created. So you can also federate or again using something like SAML, sync those with Azure Active Directory and have single sign-on for your own business applications. Finally, you've got a kind of a sync with external identities. So if you've got a Twitter account, a Facebook account, LinkedIn account, you can also attach these or synchronize these with Azure Active Directory as well. And you can, again, have a single sign-on sort of feature where you use the same account to access these external identities. And again, it uses sort of the federated federation and sort of SAML authentication to do various different external identities. But again, it's another feature that you can have there as well. So to summarize, essentially, Azure Identity and Access Management works with different cloud applications, external identities, and different on-premises or data center hosted other identity management services like Active Directory on-premises, like Facebook, like Azure, like AWS. It works with those and synchronizes with those, federates with those services outside of Azure AD and outside of Microsoft Cloud, as well as inside Microsoft Cloud, to give you a sort of single sign-on service, so you can, rather than having different accounts for all these different identities, you know, a different account for Twitter, Facebook, a different account for Dropbox, for your Amazon Web Services, for your business applications. It allows you to have one identity for them all. So it gives you that control over all these as well, and lets you control, you know, who has what level of access. And obviously we'll get into that later on in the series when we take a closer look at Azure Active Directory. So finally, I just want to take a quick look at the different types of IAM, or Azure Identity Access Management. The reason I'm touching on these three items that I've got is because they'll lead us nicely into the next few episodes that we're going to have in this series. So the first type of identity management in Azure is Azure AD. I've mentioned it quite a bit in this video. It is the center of identity management with Azure and Microsoft Cloud, regardless of what type of setup you have, if it's all cloud or hybrid. You can't get away from Azure AD. It's always going to be part of your identity management setup and kind of platform. So the second type is Azure AD Hybrid. So this is, again, we touched on having Azure AD Connect in your kind of configuration. Again, I will be showing that in later on videos. But again, Azure AD Hybrid is a different type of identity management with Azure. Finally, we've got Azure AD Domain Services, which is another type of identity management access. And again, this is probably the newest release and newest service available. Again, I'm not going to go into too much detail now, as I'm going to have a separate video on there. But essentially, it's your domain controller as a service. So you don't have to have a physical domain controller or a virtual domain controller in Azure. It's a service, and we'll go into much more detail in a later video, so you'll have to stay tuned. So that's episode 1 complete of the Azure Identity and Access Management series. Again, I've just kind of gone very high level for this introduction. I don't want to give too much away just because I've got lots more content coming in further videos. So it was very high level and more just kind of going through some theory behind Azure Identity Management. I go a lot more hands-on coming up in later episodes, so hopefully that'll be a bit more interesting. I do thank everybody for joining me. If you haven't already, please subscribe, give the video a like. If you want any comments around the video, anywhere I can improve, or even if you just want to say that you like the video, please do comment, or you can hit me up on my Twitter or on my LinkedIn. Again, thank you for watching, and until next time, goodbye.